Well, hello, welcome to module number 3. I hope you've had a great week. I enjoyed seeing your work this week, and we're going to highlight a few things from this past week and then set the stage for the coming week. So I will tell you that I have some kind of cough throat issue going on, so I'm going to try to get through this video without a lot of coughing, but if I can't, I apologize in advance. So one of the things I wanted to point out was, and I highlight Katie here from one of the discussion posts, but other people made similar comments. I was just able to more easily find Katie's as I was looking through the module. So one of the things Katie points out is the importance of, as we adjust our assessments, not watering down the test, and whether that's watering it down for our students that come from different cultural backgrounds, or students with different disabilities or abilities, or any of the host of diversity that we see in our classroom that we need to accommodate in our assessments. It's important not to water down the test, and that was a great point that Katie made, and something that I always found as a teacher and special education administrator often came up as we would talk about different accommodations, is making sure that we aren't watering down the standards, watering down the content that students are held accountable for. So I felt like, as I was looking over this, the work of the last week, and some of the posts, that it was important that we emphasize the difference between accommodations and modifications. And I know those of you in special education are probably very familiar with this, but it's important when we think about assessment, particularly because you think about accommodations being those things that we provide that might change how a child learns or accesses their curriculum, the way in which we're presenting those materials, the way a student responds. Think back to those universal design concepts that we talked about last week. But importantly, look at that third bullet up on the left under accommodations. We're keeping intact the objectives of the content or activity. So as we think about accommodating work, we want to make sure that we're still assessing those standards. We're still meeting the core curriculum to which students are being held. That's accommodating. However, then when we move over to modifications, and sometimes I find that people use these words interchangeably, and they're really not. And as soon as you move over into modifications, that's a fairly significant decision that you're making for that student, because you're changing the what. You're changing the curriculum, or you're changing the standards to which they are being held. And that's a big decision as we think about the needs of our students. So sometimes that can be changing the complexity level of information, so maybe assessing at a lower grade level or presenting curriculum at a lower grade level, but you're modifying the activities, you're modifying the objectives, and in some cases utilizing a different grading criteria. And a couple of you talked about this, and how do you balance, and I think in the discussion post this week it was primarily around students that are new to the English language or English language learners, that it's hard when you have a rubric and you're holding them to the same standards as our other students. But they bring so much more to the table that they're trying to work through. So how to find that balance in grading. So what we want to try to do as much as possible is find ways that we can accommodate, holding them to the same standards, assessing them in consistent ways for the core objectives, but how can we do that to meet them where they're at without changing the standards that are being assessed? That's a really important concept, and like I said, it's a big decision when we decide we're going to modify work for a student, because once you start doing that, it becomes really hard for that student to stay on grade level work and working towards those grade level assessments. So we'll come back to this throughout the course, but I just wanted to make sure from a vocabulary standpoint that when we talked about accommodating versus modifying, that we were all clear what that meant, and we weren't using those terms interchangeably. So as you look at this week's videos, there are two main videos that I wanted to highlight for you. One is Forest Lake Elementary School. It's a really interesting video, and I know several of you talked about your previous course that you had taken on differentiation. And this video really kind of blends that differentiation approach in the classroom and what does that look like for assessment. How are they using technology? And I know some of you are not elementary teachers, but I think when I looked at this, I really felt like it applied across the preschool through 12th grade approach levels, because so much of what they talk about can be applied in any classroom. This just happens to be an elementary school classroom. One of the things I like, one of the comments from this video that really stuck out to me is when they say there's no such thing as a regular classroom at their school. And that is so true in most of our schools. It used to be you had a regular classroom and a special education classroom. We don't have that anymore. There's so much diversity in our classrooms that you walk in and there is no such thing. And so how have they accommodated so much diversity is a really neat thing to see. And then since this week is really focused primarily on technology, I wanted to kind of provide you a counter approach. So this video is an interesting video on why technology can't fix education. And I think, number one, I find it ironic that we're talking about this in a fully online course, but that's the way it is. But one of the things that this video highlights is the challenges and limitations to technology. And some of the things that we know technology is not going to address when it comes to our relationships and the importance of relationships with students and between students, and that technology isn't going to replace good teaching, that we need to find ways to supplement our good teaching with technology. And so I liked some of the approaches that they shared and some of the correlations that they draw to technology to some of the previous things that we've done in education. In my previous district where I worked, the superintendent was adamant that we were not going to do one-to-one devices. And most of the districts around here do one-to-one devices, but this superintendent was adamant. We're not doing it. We're going to focus on our good instruction, and we'll find ways to embed good technology supports and prepare students to live in a technological world, but it's not going to be the focus of our instruction. So there's obviously various viewpoints, and your districts will have different perspectives on how technology is used, but I found this video to be a good reminder of the limitations of technology. One of the things that kind of reinforced that was Michael's post this past week of how overwhelming technology can be at times. And I know some of you had mentioned that in your districts, that we collect a ton of data, and technology has made that really easy. But then when do you have time to go through it? So one of the things Michael said that I thought framed this module really well is that he says to his students, technology is a tool, but if the tool is being used improperly or just because, it may be ineffective and not worth the time. And so I think that gets to the intentionality of what we're doing, that technology is great, but it has to be supporting the good instruction that we're using in our classroom to meet our kids. Just using technology for technology's sake is really no different than what we tell our students. So in addition to those two videos, I also will post a link to the Patents Project, and this is an Indiana resource. I was looking here at some different videos that I might share with you, but then it occurred to me that this might be more beneficial for you to look through. They have a ton of different videos about how technology can be used to support students. Most of them are only 2 to 3 minutes. And some of them are pretty clear technology. Some of them are more accommodations. Patents is an assistive technology resource center in Indiana, and one of the things that they do is they will allow teachers to borrow different pieces of technology to see what works in their classroom before they spend the money on it. So it's a great resource. So what I'm asking you to do is to click on this link. As I said, there's lots of different videos. They're very short. Some are high school, some are elementary school. Watch a couple of them, and then just send me an email or a message in Canvas about what video you watched and how you feel like you could potentially use that resource in your classroom or incorporate it. And so most of these videos, several of these stem around students with disabilities. Excuse me, but as we know, most of the things that we find are good for students with disabilities are good for all students, or can have some application for all students. So watch a couple of videos and then just send me a quick email with how you feel like that can be used in your classroom. So the week ahead, I am going to be checking with you on what are you working on the clinical log. We're in week 3 of an 8-week course, so this is going by pretty quickly. So make sure you've got a plan for your clinical activities, and that you're starting to get into that, because the rest of the course will go by pretty quickly. You've got 3 assignments this week. The first is a video upload in Canvas, so you all should be pretty comfortable with that since you've already done that once in this course, talking about technology. And then also you've got a devotional this week, and assignment 3 is related to your final project and how do you implement technology in assessment. So I hope that the various videos and work that you're going to be doing and readings from this week are getting you thinking that direction so that you're working towards that final project. I also want to highlight, and I'll put this link in the Canvas module as well, several of you, the assignment last week where you had to provide your 3 references for your final project. There were some things that I gave some feedback on related to APA. This is my favorite website to go to when I have APA questions. I hardly ever pull up the APA manual because I find it hard to navigate, but I really like this website. It's from Purdue, and I'm not a Purdue fan at all, but I'll use their stuff for free anytime. So Purdue, the online writing lab, I think is what AL stands for, and so they have a web page that's devoted to help you figuring out APA style. I go there anytime that I'm working on something or providing you feedback just to make sure that I've got the right formatting for APA. So this is a great place to go. It's really easy to navigate if you have questions or need help figuring out how to cite something in APA. Finally, the devotional this week. One of the scriptures that it cites is, it references is this devotional: "You, Lord, are good and ready to forgive and abundant in mercy to all those who call upon you." And you'll see in the devotional that it was really talking about how Christ forgives us and shows us abundant mercy. And it kind of made me think back to when I was a teacher and I taught students with emotional disabilities, and those kids would walk in and I would think, today's a new day. Today's a clean slate because the day before was rough, sometimes we had a lot of behavior, and I had to remember when that student walked in the next day that they were starting over, and I had to give them a clean slate. And so this was a good reminder for me that I have benefited from that mercy in the past. Our students need that mercy from us at times, and I hope that you can find some takeaways from the devotional this week, the way that I did, that help you as you are going through your week. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you later. Thanks.